In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to create this motion graphic right here. There's loads of great tips and tricks you can apply to all of your motion graphics that will wow your clients. I'm going to be showing you how to make the super smooth keyframes, the lighting and shadows, as well as the expressions used to control all of the boxes. Now, I'm starting with a composition pre-built, which you can download in the description for free. I've got a boxes composition here with a bunch of boxes I've made in Illustrator, as well as a circle and a white solid background. Now I'm going to press P on my keyboard to open up the position tool, and I'm going to put my circle in the starting location that I want, and then hit the stopwatch to start its first keyframe. I'm then just going to slowly plot out all of the positions that I want my circle to be in through my composition. Once I've done this, I'm just going to use these blue dots here at the end of each point to adjust the curvature, as well as just refining the locations until I've got a path I'm happy with. Now I'm going to start by selecting all of my keyframes here and pressing F9 on my keyboard to easy ease them. Now this means that the ball will slow down at each point, which isn't what I want. I only want it to be slowing down between the first and fifth points. So I'm going to select these 4 keyframes in the middle here, and I'm going to right click on them, and I'm going to select Rove Across Time. Now After Effects is going to plot this out so the first and fifth keyframes are effectively just working by themselves to easy ease between the 2 points. Now this is already looking great, but I think I want it to speed up a bit more towards the middle of my animation, so I'm just going to take this third keyframe and drag it a bit further along. I'm much happier now that the ball is reaching the midpoint of its journey a bit later in the animation, so it's time to go in and do the final touches in the speed graph editor. Make sure you've got your position selected first, and go into the speed graph editor where you can now see what the Rove Across Time keyframes have done. But unfortunately this one that we've dragged out isn't quite smooth. We're going to select it, right click it, and go to keyframe velocity and check the continuous lock button. This is going to allow us to move this keyframe freely so that we can smooth out our motion in our graph editor here. Now we're going to do the exact same for this last keyframe so that we can have the momentum that the ball has gathered continue into the end of the animation. Now by doing this, it has altered the keyframes we've already set, so we've just got to make some adjustments to bring it back to smooth out the curve of our graph here. And because I want our motion to end in quite a dramatic fashion, I'm just going to drag these handles out and make some last adjustments to the curve to make sure the motion stays smooth so that the ball arrives and slows down as it reaches its destination. And that's how I like to create really smooth motion along a path really quickly within After Effects, allowing me more time to get on with the rest of my project, like lighting and shadows. Effective and dynamic lighting is really going to level up your motion projects. So let's get into some of the tricks that I've used here to make this project feel so alive. So for this project, I decided to make the circle the main influence of light. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this box's composition and rename it Box's Brightness. And I'm going to go to the Effects and Presets rack and add the Brightness and Contrast effect to it, and pump the brightness up to somewhere about 100 and the contrast up to about 50. This is obviously ridiculously bright for our project, and we don't want it to be everywhere, we just want it to be following the circle. So I'm going to create a new solid layer, and it doesn't matter what color this solid is, as we're just going to be using it as a matte. Now I'm going to use the ellipse tool to create a mask, and holding shift create a perfect circle around the center of my composition. And very quickly I'm just going to go to Layer, Transform, and Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. Now we're going to open up our mask's controls, and we're going to drastically increase the feather so that there's a big fall off here, and we can adjust the mask expansion if we want to make our mask a bit bigger or smaller. Since this is a track matte we want affecting the surrounding area of our circle, we're going to open up the position and we're going to use the pick whip to attach it to our circle's position, and as you can see the solid follows the circle around now. Now we just want to hit the toggle switches and modes button until we get the track matte option so that we can change our box's brightness layer to have a matte attached to the black solid, which we're going to rename now, better late than never, to Brightness Matte. And now if we just disable the boxes layer beneath it, we can see that it's only the boxes around the circle that are getting this extra brightness layer on top. So now it's time to move on and create the shadows. First I'm just going to duplicate this box's composition again, and I'm going to add the effect Drop Shadow to it. Now we're just going to create a soft shadow to help the boxes pop off, so we're going to increase the softness to 100, we're going to remove the distance to 0, and this just helps lift the boxes off of the background. But to add really beautiful shadows, we're going to need to make some adjustments to our bottom layer here. So I'm going to select my bottom boxes layer, and I'm going to add the effect Radial Fast Blur to it. Now rather than edit this effect in the effects panel up here, I'm going to edit it down in the composition viewer. This is going to allow me to use the pick whip to attach the center of the Radial Fast Blur to the circle's position, which is going to make our shadows reactive to the circle as if the circle is the one emulating the light. Now we can see how the blur is affected by the circle's position, so it's time to increase the amount of blur so that we've got a much stronger shadow that will be behind our boxes. So I'm going to put mine up to about 90 here, and it creates this beautiful dreamy-like effect here, but once we layer the boxes back on top, we have these beautiful blurry shadows dictated by the circle. Now one thing I like to do to just polish off this effect is just add the fill tool to it, so I can get a uniform stylized colour that matches my composition's vibe. And finally, I'm just going to label this layer to keep it all organized. Finally, I'm going to be showing you how to make this customizable expression so that the ball repels all of the boxes and objects around it. So to begin with, we're going to jump into our boxes composition, and we're going to take this null layer here and duplicate it twice. This first one we're going to rename to controls, and the second one we're going to rename to positions. Now we're going to add the effect slider controls to our controls layer, and we're going to duplicate this effect so that we have two of them. We're also going to lock this effect panel in place so that it doesn't move around while we're working. Now I'm going to label one of these slider controls strength and the other max distance, and I'm going to give both of them a value of 200 to begin with. Now on our positions layer, we just want to press P on our keyboard to open up the position tool, and we want to attach this to our circle. So we're going to grab our boxes composition here and drag it over to this right hand panel so that we have both timelines open at the same time. This is going to allow us to use the pick whip on our nulls position to attach it to our circle's position in a different composition. And as you can see, the null now follows the movement of the circle. Now that we have all of our null layers set up, we can just move our boxes composition back into our full viewer so that we can see the entire timeline while we work. Now we're going to start writing our expression on the first box that we have here. And by pressing P on the keyboard, I'm going to open up the position. I'm going to alt click the position stopwatch, and I'm just going to clear the expression editor so we can start fresh. So for the first line, I'm going to type null position equals and then use the pick whip to select the null position that we set earlier. We now need to define the position of our own layer. So I'm going to type object position equals and then use the pick whip to select our own layer's position. Next, we want to define our control sliders. So I'm going to start by doing max distance equals and then use the pick whip to select the slider. And I'm going to do the exact same for the strength one by doing strength equals and then pick whipping the strength slider. Now these sliders we can adjust later, with the strength slider determining how far away a box moves if the circle is in an effective proximity to it, with our max distance slider affecting how far the circle's reach spans across our composition. Next, we want to calculate and define the distance between the circle and our boxes. So we're going to do distance equals length in brackets, null position, comma, object position. This will define our distance as the amount of space between our circle and the box. Next, we're going to do direction equals normalize, object position minus null position. This will calculate the direction vector between the ball and the box, so we know which direction to push the box in. And finally, we're going to define the move amount. So we're going to do move amount equals strength times by, and then we're going to open up some brackets and do 1 minus clamp. And then in the brackets for the clamp, we're going to do distance divided by max distance. And then we're going to do comma, 0, comma, 1. And that's all of the hard expressions out of the way. We just need to define the new position for our layer. We'll start by doing new position equals object position plus direction times by move amount. And then on one final line, we're just going to put new position semicolon to output the new position that we have just defined. And that's our expression complete. We just need to apply it now to every other layer. Now the quickest way to do it is to right click on the position and click copy expression only, and then shift clicking to select all of the other layers, just paste onto these boxes, and then all of these boxes will have the expression. To check that your expression is pasted properly, you can double tap E on your keyboard and it will open up any expressions on that layer. Now at the moment it doesn't look like this has had much effect on our boxes, but that's just because we need to adjust our strength and max distance sliders. And by turning these up, you'll see that the boxes start to move away. So I'm going to increase my max distance up to about 800. And as you can see now, the boxes are really repelling away from the null as it moves closer to it. And as we jump back into our final comp, we can see that we've created all of the main components of this motion graphic. The only thing left to do is add some motion blur and create some position keyframes on the final box. If you want to check out the full project file, you can find it linked in the description. Thanks for watching and make sure to subscribe for more.